The Pioneer Woman Museum is proud to present I See No Boundaries. This is a program dedicated to the enduring spirit of women who saw no boundaries. Sponsored by the Pioneer Woman Museum and the Daughters of the American Revolution. And now your host, Valerie Haynes, with I See No Boundaries.
Hi, my name is Valerie Haynes, and I'd like to welcome you to She Sees No Boundaries, brought to you by the Pioneer Woman Museum of the Oklahoma Historical Society and the Ponca City chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. She Sees No Boundaries is the show that explores the lives of Oklahoma women who've blazed trails in their professions. Our guest today is Jane Morris, and Jane has been a pilot with United Airlines for 25 years now, and she's blazed some trails, some pretty significant trails. Jane was the second woman ever to enter aviation officer training school with the U.S. Navy, and she was the first married woman to enter that training program, and was the seventh female hired to be a pilot with United Airlines. Is that correct, Jane?
That's correct, yes. And that was 25 years ago. So at the time, it didn't seem like I was very high up on the roster of being number 7, but now we have about 500 women flying, so now I am kind of senior as one of the women out of 500.
Well, how did you begin your journey to become a pilot?
Well, I get that question asked a lot because, but actually my father got his private pilot certificate the year I was born, in 1953. I'm 50 years old, but don't tell anybody that. And so I always grew up with a pilot in the family. My father was a flying farmer, so we would fly around to different farms and or vacations in the airplane, and I thought it was just natural. So I really began, getting exposed to airplanes from the get-go, from the very beginning. And I went to college. My dad put the seed that, well, maybe I'd like to learn to fly. And I thought, well, yes, of course. And, well, really never anything turned out from that, but I started thinking, and when I went to college, just like English and math, I took aviation, and that is the University of Oklahoma. So I took aviation classes and went from the ground school to the flight school and received my private pilot certificate in 1972. So really, I've been involved in aviation for 31, 32 years now. I'm not that old.
Wow, that's an interesting story. So, an airplane and grew up with this. You didn't begin your training as a pilot until college.
Not until college. And I ended up at OU, they did not have an aviation degree, so my degree is in finance, but I took all the aviation courses that they offered, and today they do have several degree programs in that at the university in aviation. So I did get an extra amount of courses on my transcript for my finance degree. Finance and flying meshed together nicely. So from there I went teaching at OU, turned right around where I learned to fly and taught aviation courses. And that was a great way to build up experience, was teaching right there where I learned to fly. And from there I went to the Navy. And at that time in 1977, they had just allowed women into the different military training programs, flight training programs, and I went to the Aviation Officer Candidate School in Pensacola. Second class of females, and quite an experience, Marine drill instructors. Does that tell you enough? So.
Well, that must have been an experience. And now you were, if I've got this right, you were the second woman to enter that training school?
Exactly. And what happened is the airlines hadn't hired. I had this dream of flying for the airlines. And I don't know how I got that dream, except I looked at what was probably the greatest, the neatest job within the aviation spectrum, okay, and it was an airline pilot. There were no women flying as an airline pilot during the 70s, and it was just my blessing that I was on the right pathway, because in 1978 the airlines began to hire women. And I was in a position, not having incurred an obligation in the Navy. Actually, I was in the Navy pool waiting for flight training for about 9 months, and they allowed me out as I took a job with United Airlines. So all my flight experience prior to going to United was from the University of Oklahoma.
Goodness, that's
was busy.
You sound like it was. It sounds like it was very busy. This couldn't have been the easiest thing to accomplish, especially being only the second woman accepted to this program and the first married woman. Were there obstacles that you had to overcome, or?
Well, I'm sure there were obstacles that I, at that time, was not as aware of. My timing was perfect for someone who, basically, the women ahead of me opened the doors for me. The women that applied and got denied, the women that, protested, so to speak, and said, give us an opportunity. And as I was just at the right place in my career choosing to go into the Navy, they accepted women for the first time. So a little bit of my career progress and path was mostly being at the right place, right time. Now, the challenges probably were being involved in a career that was mostly men. But at the time, I really didn't feel that it was a subject area or a career that I couldn't do. I think my father, my mother always just said I could do anything I wanted to do. So, and to be an eternal optimist, I just took that as the gospel, and I proceeded on. So, in a way, a little bit of being naive to the real struggles was to my benefit, because I just continued on and was in the right place, position to be accepted into the Navy and then to get hired at United.
So you literally saw no boundaries.
Well, I saw no boundaries. Thank you very much. Yes, I mean it was a blessing for me that the women ahead of me paved the way, opened the doors for me.
That's a wonderful story. We're talking today with Jane Morris, and we'll be back in just a moment.
The Pioneer Woman Museum is dedicated to Oklahoma's pioneering women, those women who saw no boundaries to what they could accomplish. See the story of aviation pioneer Jerry Cobb, the inaugural gowns of the First Ladies of Oklahoma, saddles, spinning wheels, stoves, organs, quilts, and many other unique items. Exceptional stories are told at the Pioneer Woman Museum, Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5, and Sunday, 1 to 5. Pioneer Woman Museum is located at US 77 and Lake Road. Come visit the Pioneer Woman Museum today.
Welcome back. My name is Valerie Haynes, and we're here today with Jane Morris. Jane, we've been talking about how you got started in a career in aviation, and you said you literally didn't see any boundaries. But do you think being a woman made it more difficult to succeed in your field, or easier, or did it have any bearing at all?
A lot of times, a little bit of both. When I look back and realize and analyze what was going on, some of it was being a little different, being, oh, there's a female here, there's a girl, there's a woman, then maybe in a way that made it a little easier, because right before the doors opened, they were certainly closed entirely. In order to be an airline pilot, most of the restrictions were such that you could only get the qualifications through the military. And the military had the doors closed for women in any combat, any aviation duty, like flying airplanes. So, in a way, the fact that they finally opened the doors, okay, for women, and being a woman that was just about ready, I was in the pathway, I had already received my flight experience and I had proven that I could fly, then it made it a little easier for me to be the one that was prepared, the person that was prepared as a female, as a woman to go in. Some of the difficult areas would be just from the initial, normally from that first experience or that initial time when someone meets you and you're a woman and they're expecting a man, they're a little bit set back. And I think one of the issues would be walking through that, stepping through that, a little bit of the questionable men and or women that you're doing this job. I remember one time bringing a flight from Norman to Ponca City, and I was flying a Cherokee 140, which is a small airplane, and I went out in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, to pick up my passengers. It was two men and their camera equipment, in a very small airplane. They looked at the small airplane, and they looked at me, and they were a little bit set back, and I could tell that they did not really want to go on this flight. They had no other options at that time in the morning, and they had filming a shooting here at Ponca City at Conoco. So they boarded the airplane reluctantly. I brought them home, which they didn't realize probably that this was my home, and I knew every little crack along the road from Norman, Oklahoma to Ponca City. So I got them right here expeditiously. They took their shots, and they went back, and they were delighted with the lovely flight that they had. And I think that sometimes I could have been set back. I could have been insulted a little bit by their initial reactions to seeing me be their pilot and seeing that being their airplane. Sometimes you have to kind of step beyond that initial reaction of people when they see that, oh, you're the pilot. Even today, flying the 747-400, I get a lot of, oh, you're the pilot. And if I take that with a lot of fun and not as an insult, then I have a great time with it.
So then determination and a sense of humor.
I think that is a wonderful. And sometimes I just have to let some things just fly over my head. And I ask, some ladies will ask me, like, you know, what's your good recommendation? And that's what I tell them. I say, let's get stuck on all the issues. So that was a fun time. And by the way, that particular crew or passengers that I was said to me, they said, well, what do you plan to do with your career? Now, here I was just a flight instructor and staff transportation at OU, and I said, well, I'd like to be an airline pilot one day. Well, you've got to be careful what you say, because about the next 2 days later, in the newspaper at the campus newspaper, or may have even been the Norman newspaper, but on the headlines, college co-ed has career to be airline pilot. And I thought, oh my gosh, there are no women flying for the airlines. I was a little bit embarrassed, but now I look back and I think, I like that headline. that was a good headline. So that was a lot of fun way back 30 years ago.
Well, and it was prophetic, of course.
It was prophetic.
And blazing trails like you have, and such a successful career. What do you think are some of your most significant accomplishments?
Well, one of the things is accomplishments, finally attaining captain on the biggest airplane, at one time the largest airline. We have now dwindled a little bit, but captain on the 747 was probably the top-notch job that I'd always sought, and so I was able to make that just about my 50th birthday. So right about just before I turned 50, I was able to make that position concrete, you know.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Then the next one was having 5 children. That was an accomplishment, but yet merging children and career and you know, and my husband all together was probably one of my, I feel, you know, certainly an accomplishment.
That certainly is an accomplishment. And we're talking today with Jane Morris, and we'll be back in just a moment.
The Pioneer Woman Museum is dedicated to Oklahoma's pioneering women, those women who saw no boundaries to what they could accomplish. See the story of aviation pioneer Jerry Cobb, the inaugural gowns of the First Ladies of Oklahoma, saddles, spinning wheels, stoves, organs, quilts, and many other unique items. Exceptional stories are told at the Pioneer Woman Museum, Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5, and Sunday, 1 to 5. Pioneer Woman Museum is located at US 77 and Lake Road. Come visit the Pioneer Woman Museum today.
Welcome back. My name is Valerie Haynes, and we're talking today with Jane Morris. Jane, in a career that has spanned now 25 years, or more than 25 years actually, being one of the first women to break through the barriers and become a commercial airline pilot, you've accomplished so many things. And of course, I think most people stand back at some point in their lives and look at what had happened and think, well, if I'd done this differently. Have you ever done that? Are there things that you would have done differently?
You know, looking back, there are things that I would have done differently. And being that I am 50 years old, but you're not going to tell anybody.
No.
Okay. I've learned a few things, and I would do things slightly different. Now, I do feel that I was blessed along the way, not even knowing it, as I chose different pathways and as I worked my way to this present day position. But I feel that so much of the good advice given that my parents, well-meaning teachers, friends, such as, follow your dreams, just stick to it. You can do anything, go for it. Just so many of the good, encouraging remarks. I feel that that is a wonderful way to success into any career. Anybody can succeed if you follow those measures. But once you're there, then you begin to question yourself, but what is the real purpose of life? What am I really here for? And not that I haven't loved reaching my final goals in aviation, but it makes you kind of begin to question, what is life all about? What's the real purpose? And having 5 children and trying to mesh that and coordinate that together, unite that in one life, I began to really seek out. And for me, my testimony would be, had I known what I know today, I think I would have chosen some different pathways along my career, probably, I hope, still succeeding in getting to be a 747-400 pilot, but probably doing it just a little differently. And I mean that by seeking out what my true purpose is in life is by my relationship, and here's where I will tell you about my life, is my relationship with Jesus Christ, and seeking out and trying to learn His Word, His instruction book. And one of the studies I did, and I learned so much, it said really that if you want to find out about an invention, you can't ask the invention about what its use is for, what its purpose is in life. You've got to ask whoever created it, or the owner's manual. And so Jesus created us, the Father created us for a purpose, and what I have to do in my life is to seek out from that Creator or from His Word, the instruction manual or the owner's manual, what my purpose is in life. And to me, that is where I would have done things a little differently along the way had I had that knowledge of what is my purpose in life from the great Creator, and I would have followed that, hopefully to get into a time where my successes would have been maybe less stressful. It's very painful to leave 5 children for a week and go off and fly. And even though, it's part of my career, it's something that I have to deal with as I depart and leave the 5 children. So I look at and I say, how would I have done things differently? I think I would have sat back and said, and sought my purpose as the Bible says, and followed that pathway that I was designed for. I'm here today, kind of coming around the path that kind of curved around a little bit. I'm now seeking that straight and narrow path. And I wish that I would have, hope that today, that I can influence my children, that they might be able to seek that narrow path and have that instruction book at their hand at all times. And when I think of the pioneer woman, I see her striding along with her Bible in one hand. And I think we need, as women, to recognize that that is a symbol that she's carrying. I just love that pioneer woman, and I'm so thankful that I'm from the city that has that statue standing tall. But that she is striding along with her instruction book in hand, and I don't think that's an accident that she was designed that way.
Well, along the same line, then, talking about what you would have done differently had you had the perspective that you have now, what do you see for your future?
I see for my future now is to continue to study, and I would like to perfect my speaking skills, that I might be able to share what I've learned with other young women and men, just other children and young youth, and maybe even 50-year-olds, because I've learned this at an older age, and I just feel like I would like to share with what I've learned through my experiences with others, and especially where the answers are. And I'm pointing toward knowing God's Word.
We're talking today with Jay Morris, and we'll be back in just a moment.
The Pioneer Woman Museum is dedicated to Oklahoma's pioneering women, those women who saw no boundaries to what they could accomplish. See the story of aviation pioneer Jerry Cobb, the inaugural gowns of the First Ladies of Oklahoma, saddles, spinning wheels, stoves, organs, quilts, and many other unique items. Exceptional stories are told at the Pioneer Woman Museum, Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5, and Sunday, 1 to 5. Pioneer Woman Museum is located at US 77 and Lake Road. Come visit the Pioneer Woman Museum today.
Welcome back. We're here today with Jane Morris, and we've been talking about your career as an aviator, being one of the first women to have a career as a commercial pilot. Mm-hmm. Looking from your perspective now, all your years in
Yes.
the industry, what advice do you have for young women who are considering a career in aviation or beginning a career in aviation today?
Well, one thing I noticed that aviation is just, I say that we're a jack of all trades, master of none. So I love the career of aviation because you know and you learn about a large spectrum of things. I hope I am a master of flying the 747, but anyway, it is a fun, adventurous career or endeavor. You know, I love flying. And I would just want to encourage anyone that if they want to just learn so much beyond what you can imagine, that things that you wouldn't even think about, you know, let's see, meteorology, you know, aerodynamics, just the skill of flying an airplane is just lots of fun. But one of the things that I also look at is every day you go out to work, and we don't really call it work, we go out to fly. When we go out to fly, it's an adventure. Never is it the same. So if you're into wanting to, you know, seek adventure, because you never the same situation. You're always going to come up against different situations, weather or airports or people that you're flying with. So I look at that to encourage women, men that want to go for adventure, that aviation is great adventure. Now I also have to, though, caution that someone didn't caution me, that when you go flying, you're normally going someplace, okay? And so if you have a family at home, you're leaving them. Chances are that you're leaving them. And so that's a tough decision, is family and flying can sometimes not mesh real well together, okay? Now, here's again the blessing. People used to say, Jane, you know, you were very lucky. And I say, no, I'm very blessed. And I really do, because the Lord did not bless us, Tom and I, with children until 12 years of marriage and about 10 years at United Airlines, okay? Well, I was well established in my career. And then, when the 5 children came along, at least I was fairly senior. And in the airline business, seniority is everything. Choosing schedules, days off, and what have you. So as it worked for me, I was blessed that my children came later in life. My children now are just 16 to 6 years old. So I'm still dealing with raising children at this time. But with a career in flying, generally your work is done all at once, then you have several days off. So that meshes well with the family, that part of it. The downside is that when you're gone, you're normally distant. And that's kind of difficult. So as my advice is, when adventure in a career, it's great. Traveling is wonderful, but traveling has its drawbacks if you have a family. So you might think about something about aviation too. I look for careers that you can step in and step out of. Aviation you really can, except for if you're with a seniority-based job like I am with an airline. But there's lots of jobs within the aviation business that you can actually experience, learn, build your career, step out of, raise your family, and then step back into. Because it doesn't change a whole lot. And what changes, you can normally be trained and spooled up on any of the changes. So that my advice is to just watch out, because I was actually, as I was growing up, I thought I could do it all. I really thought I could have those 5 kids bouncing on my knee as I went off to work and take care of my husband, and my parents lived next door too. So there's a lot of sharing that you have to, you know, juggle with when you have anyone with a family. And as you probably know too, with a career and a family, there are sacrifices, you know.
Well, and that's a good point. There's always a juggling act between a career and family. And as the mother of 5 children, you've been very successful at doing this. I mean, what's your secret?
Well, let me just say this. I'll make this brief. I used to have so often when the flight attendants could come up to the cockpit and see us. Now they can't. We have a locked door. Flight attendants can't come up. Nobody can come up and visit. When they would come up, they would say, "Jane, you're flying this airplane. You have 5 children. How do you do it?" And I hate to say it, it just opens the window. Well, let me really tell you about my crutch in my faith, and that is how I feel successfully transitioned from just a career to a mother also, and that is following that instruction book. I'll have to come back to that, God's Word. And to me, that has been the best blessing in all the world, to find that.
Jane, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today. Just been a fascinating story. And thank you for joining us for She Sees No Boundaries. And I invite you all to visit the Pioneer Woman Museum.